Hello and welcome back. The date for the record is the 19th of August 2024. And we're going through a sting operation. Everything's event driven.
She filed that motion we were talking about called a writ of mandamus. And I have to tell you, I'm going to tell you what it is, but what really is the point of this first five. We are watching a parallel universe, a legal parallel universe evolving in Washington, D.C., where you have one party, one side, working to follow the rule of law and to move a case forward as the law requires in this country. And you have the deep state American left simply refusing to honor the very structure of our law, simply refusing to honor the system created in the Constitution.
And so after we filed in DOD, good DOD, this is what we heard on Judy Byington.
The American Bar Association, their judges and lawyers will soon be taken down. In the 1500s, the International Bar Association, Bar British Accredited Registry, was created by foreign entities of the Roman Vatican Empire in collusion with the Pope, the Queen of England, and King Henry VIII. In the 1800s, the U.S. corporation crafted a new branch of the bar called the ABA, American Bar Association. Both associations are controlled by foreign entities. Their rules of civil procedure was written under old Roman law and does not apply to we the people.
And this is important because you can't make this up. And we know that something's terribly wrong in D.C. It's a foreign pedo corporation. 28 U.S.C. 3002 proves it. And their attorneys work for the Queen, the Vatican, the 1%. We know this because when you try to get justice in their corporation, and oh, by the way, they can only operate in D.C. So this is important that you know 1870, 1871, because it shows you they're standing up void ab initio law, fake law, that allows them to go to different states and operate. Everything's a corporation and they're corrupt. So the second that you understand what's going on, fraud vitiates everything. And the reason why it's been so long, they're doing this forever, is because they've got their people working for themselves because it's a privately owned corporation. Okay, so I'm going to stop right here because whoever's running the sting operation, they're controlling the television. And they said that Rome stood up their illegal system around 1400s. That's when they designed the doctrine of discovery, at least the first one. So in my mind's eye, going back, you got to understand, if you're going and you're using Rome and how their generals, the Flavians, not only created Christianity because the Jews, the real Jews, beat their ass, and they want to make sure that they always had the upper hand. Well, where did they get this government system, this injustice system? They got it from the Druids because they wiped the Druids off. Okay? So when they genocide you, they try to wipe you off the face of the earth and they become you. So there's two of you until they wipe you off the face of the earth. So everybody knows, if you look at that brown book, they tried to genocide the copper color Moors, and replace them. Preserve the white race. That's what Plecker said. There were two types of bloods. This is deep. It's deep. It's spiritual. So, you got to think. Alright. So if they're using the Druids, that government system, that injustice system, they're doing the opposite to keep the upper hand. But if you look what she said they developed the Americans Bar Association. So if you go to the Rothschilds, because if you look at the red, white, and blue flag, or even if you go and you look at their DC flag, that's a Roman flag. The red and white white means, red and white means they're always at war with you, Moors, because you've got the copper color. You're closer to God. There's two different types of blood types. All of them, the evil people, have the blue bloods. They call them blue bloods. All right? And you got to understand, because they don't have any remorse once they try to kill you, especially your child. They're after your children, because if they get into your children's mind, they can control your children. They control the future. That's why you always have to protect your children from these people, because they're innocent. And so they know how to go after your kids and instill their way of life before they get older. All right? Okay, so she said in that video that they stood up the bar in the 1400. However, the American bar was stood up in 1870, stomp stomp. That's when the bankers, the Rothschilds, the Vatican, the Queen, they bought the United States Inc., aka the Virginia Company of London. And it says here, Ministry of Justice, American Bar Association. That's what's coming down. The American Bar Association was founded by the Rothschilds banking family in 1870, right? So it goes with what happened in 1870 when they came to land that wasn't lost, and they stood up the Corporation Act in 1871. This happened in Indiana. Why is it in Indiana? You're supposed to keep your ass in D.C. So you see what they're doing? They're masquerading around and pretending that they're the boss, and they're violating everything. Okay, so I'm going to stop for those who haven't been indoctrinated, a little slow. Why can't they go out of D.C.? Because they're a corporation. 28 U.S.C. 3002 proves it. They're a corporation which must follow commerce law. A84 says you can't exist if you violate the law. All right? So what they're doing and what they did in 1870, follow me now, because that's when they designed the bar for you, Moors, to use against you. 1870, 1871. So they already knew what they were going to do in the 1400s, because they had to have this whole government system. It's out of control, but it's well organized because of the Flavians, the generals who got beat by the Jews back in Nero's day, Caesar's day. All right, so follow me. They can't go, but yet they're going. They're masquerading around, pretending. I'm saying this because I'm going to read Justice Anna's affidavit, and she's trying to explain what happened. But you got to be really careful, because these people are sneaky. You don't know who's good, who's bad, especially when you're going through a sting operation. You just have to look at the facts, look at the patterns, and use your own God-given discernment. Now, they have rules and regulations, statutes, codes that they must follow because they're a corporation. They're not a government. You don't have to listen to Kmart, Jack in the Box, the United States Inc. Foreign Peddle Corporation, aka the Virginia Company of London, aka look at the Clearfield Doctrine. At the end of the day, you have to know that they're a privately owned corporation which must abide by God's law. You're the boss, and they're making you into, they're oppressing you, lowering your frequency, and they're calling you a debtor, and their people debt collectors, and the states and the governors and the sheriffs, if you will, either debt collectors or creditors. All right? You follow? They have to stay in D.C. They're limited to that area. So you got to ask yourself, well, we first had our people, copper colored people, trying to pass the real Constitution in Philadelphia. What happened in Philadelphia? Why did they change from doing business in Philadelphia to standing up Rome in D.C.? It has to come down. They're corrupt. They're a corporation that spread their wings, and they're using void ab initio orders, just like how they did it with the Hawaiians. And once again, they apologized with the Hawaiians, or to the Hawaiians in 1993. So it's a matter of law that they follow the law. And based on this or their rules and regulations, they're not following the law. They're just doing whatever they want. There's two of everything, and they're making you the straw man, the slave. They will never have jurisdiction over the real sovereign you. But yeah, the straw man you. So that's what they did. They made a straw man you. And what they did was they put your real constitution, which is the will of the majority of the people, in a dustbin. Alright? And then they started changing history. They did the exact same thing in Hawaii. But they apologized in 1993. They got to apologize to you too, Moors, from Amoricus. Now, if you focus on Marbury versus Madison, it tells you they have to abide by the Constitution. Nobody loses when you use Marbury versus Madison as a reference, because they're telling you they're wrong and they're just playing you. If you don't know this, if you don't know your rights, you don't have rights. Now follow me. The general misconception is that any statute passed by legislation, they're not really a corporation, they're playing you, Roman law, right? Bearing the appearance, so there's appearance, they're using assumption, presumption, plausible deniability. That's why they use administrative effort until you give up. If you give up, if you leave the battlefield, then you lose by default. This is a trick. It's a rich man's trick. It's the Roman trick. They're cheaters. They're liars. All right? Appearance of law constitutes a law of the land. The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land, but it has to be the will of the majority of the people. They threw your Constitution in a dustbin, and they're playing you. And they're coming up with void ab initio, 1870, 1871, and they're dispersing their people throughout. And when they disperse their people, especially the injustice system, it's the Jesuit judges, the prosecutors, the court clerks, they're the registry. They have to, by UCC, put everything on the record. But when they put it on the record, they're trying to get you to contract with them to give up your rights. You follow? And you do it, not knowing. So it's fraud, vitiates everything. It has to come down. So the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and any statute to be valid must be in agreement. It is impossible for law which violates God's law or the Constitution. The Constitution is supposed to be based on the Bible. God's law, and God's law said don't harm. All right? Violates the Constitution to be valid. This is succinctly stated as follows. All laws which are repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. Void ab initio, void from the start. Okay, so I'm here and help you think. Everything that violates God's law when they're harming, killing you, is void ab initio. Is the 1930 Act, aka the Moor/Indian Removal Act, void ab initio? Yeah, because they're outside of D.C. Okay, let me ask another question. Are the military installations outside of D.C., is that void ab initio? I'm saying that because I went to Fort Benning, which is Fort Moore now, and you've got the security guards there, third-party contractors with the red, white, and blue flag with the yellow fringe. They're laughing about how much information they have with that driver's license that gives them all the information about you, your history. Is that void ab initio? It is. So, we got a problem, right? So who's the solution? What's the solution? The solution is you. Don't do it. It's you. Stop paying into their nonsense. Okay, so here's the easy one. Are the courts, the United States Inc. Foreign Federal Corporation, privately owned courts, are they void ab initio? When you know, when you walk into their courtroom and you see a red, white, and blue flag with a yellow fringe, are you supposed to be going in there when they can't give you an oath of office? We have a problem. The courts throughout America, owned by DOD, the bad DOD, right? Owned by the Rothschilds, owned by the bar, they're void ab initio. That's why I was happy when they finally said yesterday Yeah, the judges, the attorneys, the clerks, and the sheriffs. Now in the bondsmen, they are void ab initio. They need to go together. They've been running a scam outside of D.C. Mulberry versus Madison. Remember that, Mulberry versus Madison, which means basically the Constitution is the law of the land, which has to be the will of the majority of the people. It will never be the will of the majority of the people because the 1% in D.C. is the 1% playing you. That's why it has to come down, all right? Okay, so let me show you how they're playing you. Remember Edward House? He says we're going to grab all their information, put it in a centralized database. So that driver's license, which is part of the Babylonian bullshit system, it will tell you when they scan it who you are. It will give you all your history. So when they scanned my husband's driver's license, it said he not only has a lawsuit against them, but he's an attorney. So they gave him a case number. Actually, they gave him a warning with a case number that starts the bit bond process. Now go to Idaho, Iowa, Chris, when Tyrone and Chris gives them their social security number, which is connected to their driver's license. If they don't have a driver's license, they can still look you up. And they can use the bit bond. They can easily put you in their for-profit jail because they get money. This is a Roman Babylonian system that they're using your birth certificate, your social security number, your driver's license. Comptroller, anybody that has a red, white, and blue flag with the yellow fringe, that's the banner. That's the Roman banner. They're supposed to be in their flag, and their banner is supposed to be in D.C. They cannot disperse throughout America. But they're doing it because you don't know your rights. If you don't know your rights, they're thinking you don't have rights. And even if you do know your rights, they have all their people, their attorneys, right, Tyrone, get together and try to convince you to give up your rights. Those attorneys work for who? The Queen, the Vatican, the 1%, the 70%. They would never give someone, because you got good people that work in their organization and they don't have a clue what's going on. So the people, the leaders, are connected to the Queen, the Vatican, the 1%, a child, and Epstein. So they would give your case to one of their brethren, because everybody's involved. I know this because I have 300 defendants, and they'll tell you their dirty little secret. Everybody's involved. They stand up different agencies, and you're funding it, and that's wrong. They can never use your money and hire people, right, Iowa, to defend your defendants, and that's what they're doing, and that's what they did in VA. Iowa got busted. We're going through a sting operation. They can play, but they can't get caught. All right? So in our case, understand they got you indoctrinated using their flag, their red, white, and blue banner that's only supposed to be located where? In D.C. And they're using your social security number, your driver's license. That's why we said, prove to us that that driver's license is required. It's not law. You can never pass law. You can never be in charge of a sovereign person because you're a corporation that should have been dissolved because I did the quo warranto. As per pro confesso, if I'm not in one of your incompetent courts, you're confessing. You follow? That's why we're going through a sting operation, because we already did the work for you. You got to wake up and understand who you are. You're dealing with the devil and his pimps, and he will never have authority over you. He will never have jurisdiction. Let me give you an example. So when I'm bitching and complaining, when I'm going in and out of court, in our kangaroo court, my main complaint is subject matter jurisdiction. The second they violate your due process, the second they violate your safety, you can't stay in our nation. You're a health hazard. That's why they have to have health hazard bonding information, because it causes a health hazard. You know, you can't. Do you see why your frequency is so low? Do you see why we're not happy? Because when one person hurt, we all hurt, and we try to help each other, or we say, oh, that's what they do. I had so many people when I was in D.C. tell me this. Oh, that's what they do. Well, is that okay with you? If this happened to you, will you say that's what they do and just ignore it? I don't think so. If it happens to your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, do you just say, well, that's what they do? It's only going to take 10 years. This is what Tara Jones said. Oh, it takes 10 years to get justice because, I work in building 810 and they will try to kill you. Well, wait a minute. Didn't you just say you were a Navy officer? Is that okay with you? Navy officer who took an oath to defend the Constitution? You're a criminal. Come on down. You're a defendant. This is what we have to do. But when they told us today, hey, we're taking them down. About time. Right, Spencer? It is about time. Because I did the quo warranto, writ of mandamus, everything. It's time to take them down because they're messing with too many people, too many It's about the kids. I got my nephew and Chris they're messing with. And so they said it's time to take down the bar. Now, I was working with Ken and Carrie. Well, Ken, he contacted me, I think about 2 years ago and said, Sue, it's time to take down the bar. I said, baby, I did the lien and I used Justice Anna's lien document. And I've been just updating the lien. Because what you have to do is do a quo warranto. And we did a writ of mandamus first and then the quo warranto. And then we're just waiting while we're catching all these criminals. They're all attorneys, judges, court clerks, sheriffs who call you black, who wants to get your bit bond. And they're operating off of Roman law. And it's not for you. And so they get busted. Like I said before, the high-hanging fruits like Amy Berman Jackson and the pedo Justice Roberts, they already capitulated. You know it, because even if you don't take my case, you can go to Linwood and he's telling you all these people are pedos. The Queen, the Vatican, the 1%. It's time to tell America the truth. And America, the reason why your frequency is so low and you're so afraid of those judges in those black robes, Jesuit robes, is because they're playing you using their red, white, and blue flag with the yellow fringes. Now, if you take our case, even if you take Robert's case, you'll see how we went in and out and how they used their pawns. The DOD, Joe Dunford, Admiral Christopher French. And they used the sheriff. When the sheriff came over our house to give us a fake order, when we told him this is fake, he should have said, what? And when we went to the MP station here at Fort Meade and we gave them a copy of the video of us being harassed. Oh, by the way, I wasn't there and you can't give a peace order. We're telling the police here on post that, hey, they're violating our rights. And then they have the nerve to take it to their director on post, a third party, to tell his pawn to come over to us and tell us it's against the law to tape record Von Sell, the main defendant in our higher court case, violating 18 U.S.C. 1501. You know what? It's so ridiculous because now you know that something's terribly wrong at Fort Meade with the police telling us a lie. He's untrained. We told him, you can't tell us this. You need more training. What are you doing with the training dollars? You got to understand that they're all involved. We have been infiltrated inside out, and what they're doing is they're using Roman law. And when they go after you, when they call you black or white, they want to use your bit bond under the Roman law. Same with Tyrone. And then I challenged them. I said, first of all, we're sovereign. He's a Moor. We're not going to play your game because we know your bit bond game. Prove to us that driver's license, social security numbers, birth certificates, that flag, that red, white, and blue flag with the yellow fringe that you got on your shoulder is legal. It's not legal. If you look up 1870, 1871, and you see how they dispersed their people when they're only supposed to do business in D.C., they got to be dissolved. They can play, but they can't get caught. I want you to understand that because when we challenge them, because most people don't challenge them, or they spend so much money, thousands of dollars playing administrative fuckery, that these people think it's a joke. They're constantly hiring people to call me and say, how much money do you have? Or can we borrow $10,000? How are you getting all this money fighting us? Because the first thing they do is they go into your banking account and they try to take all your benefits. Then they write policy and saying, hey, if you don't know your rights, you don't have rights. And then they said, we're violating 18 U.S.C. 241 under the color of law 242. And if you catch us, we go to prison for 11 years. And if you're a protected group, 245, then that's another year. So they're playing you. And so I said, no, we got to stop this. How do you stop these devils and their pimps? In Rome, in D.C., you do a writ of mandamus, you give them a chance to do what's right. They don't want to do what's right. You do a quo and tow. After you pay. Well, if we pay, they can't violate commerce law. So today was a good day, or yesterday was a good day, because everybody's watching on social media. On social media. Understand what's going on as it pertains to the bar. We tried to take down the bar. We took down the bar. We paid for it. We're just playing a sting operation, and you got to understand, here, read this, because when you have a right to sue letter, you have a right to sue the Vatican, the Queen, the 1%, the military-industrial complex, and we've got the right to sue letters. It took us 2 years to get it. It should have, they had all 215 claims locked in the Army safe server, DOD safe server, CCR. They had it in 2018. We went to mediation. But their attorneys in Rome decided they were going to play us like they play everybody. They don't discriminate. They use their toolbox, their pawns, their third-party contractors, their sheriffs, their military installation, Fort Meade. Because, you know what? When we tell them, show them hard evidence of felonies, they have to arrest them. Otherwise, they're just as bad as a perpetrator. That's why you got to know 42 U.S.C. 1985 and 1986. And understand the second they violate your due process, they're not going anywhere until they make you whole. We've been doing this for 6 years, so guess what? Fraudulent inducement applies. As it pertains to Chris and Tyrone, Chris been in jail for how many months? 3, 4? And they're threatening Tyrone, and they can't because they don't have authority. They will never have jurisdiction over the real you. That's why they made a strawman you. And that's why they got to come down. Right, Spencer? Spencer says, can't happen fast enough. That's right. And I want everybody on the record, because it's on the record. They got to copy my affidavit that stands as true. In 2020, I think it was 2020. Yeah, 2020, I started my unrebutted affidavit that stands as true. And when you write an affidavit, all you need is the truth. You don't need to focus on what they're saying because you're a protected group. And all you need is unrebutted, in commerce law that is, which stands as truth. And you tell them what you want. And you tell them that you're sovereign and they're the one committing a criminal act. That's why it's mandatory. It's a felony if they don't have insurance. If you're an individual working in our nation and you work for a foreign peddle corporation, United States Inc. Foreign Peddle Corporation, you have to have insurance just in case you get caught. They can play, but they can get caught. And if we sue your company, we got 2 right to sue letters, they have to have over $100 million because they're making $700 trillion off of you. And it's time to come down. Now, they did this, the Jesuits did this in Austria, and they got caught in the 1800s. And so they didn't worry about getting caught because they popped right back up because they had all their structure. They had the churches, they had their universities. And so we're not paying attention to what they're doing. And so they stood right back up. That's why when we all wake up and when we do our research, we've got to take down everything. Otherwise, in their mind's eye, we're not going to get all of them. Even though probably we could, maybe. right? If everybody sticks up for each other. And the second that we see that they're doing something wrong, violating our rights, our God-given rights, we nip it in the bud. What happened is they hire their people one after the other. And everybody, that's why it's good or evil. You don't know who's good, who's evil. Because when you talk about the United States Inc., you're talking about greed. You're talking about people who are in the business, bankers, of harming you. And they don't care. They eat your babies. And that's why the residential schools, if you want to really study how they think, you got to take those residential books and those results. Because the bankers and the United States Inc. and the military, they made a pact to steal your kids, eat your kids, rape your kids, imprison your kids. You've got to understand their mind. Because they don't care about you. They studied you and said you're easy. You're not going to do your homework. We're going to overwhelm you with television. We're going to overwhelm you with drugs. We're going to put your kids in our for-profit prison. And at the same time, if you backtalk or if you are a threat, we're going to put you in there too. And when you're in there, we're going to rape you. We're going to drug you. We're going to experiment on you. That's what's happening right now. I've got 60 women who didn't have a trial in their state court, prisons, and they're experimenting on them using the COVID vaccine. Isn't that odd to you? Is that okay? Don't wait until it happens to you, and don't give away your guns. You have a right to protect yourself against these people. All right? Don't let them convince you to do something against your God-given inalienable rights. All right, so if you know your rights, you have rights. Tyrone, Chris, and all my 8A clients, we know our rights. And so we know good and damn well they're not going or they don't have jurisdiction over us. But do you know? We're worried about you. Do you know what to do? All right? But it was a good day yesterday when they said they're coming down. So when they're coming down, if you look at Justice Anna's affidavit, it basically tells you about the Queen, the Vatican, the 1%, what I've been reading about how they took over America using void ab initio documents and standing up their corporation. They're a criminal corporation. And then specifically it says, and I'll read so you understand part of it. Once again, the Clearfield Doctrine basically says they're all privately owned. So you got to wake up. So you have to read between the lines. They're a criminal organization. And let me read what Justice Anna said, her affidavit that stands as true. She's playing the game. All right? We know everybody has a script. We know the rules of the game. They have infiltrated us inside out. Who's they? It's Rome. You got to go all the way back to Flavian, Caesar, who believes in the devil. They were cult members, guys. And they were trying to always fight against the real Jews. That's why when you look at the 1724 Black Christian Code, it says, hey, if you see any real Jews, get them out. All right? Who's the real Jews? The Moors. So far. Okay, so I'm going to read the whole affidavit because it applies to everybody who's been done wrong by the Roman law. Their people. So in my case, in Jeff's case, everybody. Tyrone's, Chris's. So I'm reading Justice Anna's affidavit, and she basically says at the bottom, it should, her affidavit, she says, I am returning a wet ink copy of the public international notice to vacate. It should be sufficient to explain the situation and the duty of the municipal and territorial officers alike. So all these attorneys, the Jesuit judges, that's what she is referring to. And she says, Jimmy, like everybody else, is a victim of a double-ended impersonation scheme and is owed all succor and assistance. Now, I'm saying that because Jimmy was my 88 client. He was disabled. And so this is a scenario. I don't know if he's real or not because I know Jimmy and James, they're playing the game. because James came up and told me, leave Justice Ann alone. We're winning. We're winning. I said, what kind of winning game are you playing? And what are you doing with your son? Something's terribly wrong, because she said, I read with dismay the details of the incarceration and mistreatment of one of our own. All right? I regret to say Jimmy is not alone. So when she says this, I'm thinking about my incarcerated persons in Washington State. I'm thinking about Chris. I'm thinking about everybody who's been in there for-profit jail. And she says, no commercial court, the Roman court, and their people, right? Look at 1870, 1871. No commercial court can hear the issues you are presenting, because they're all criminal. The second they violate your due process, the second they violate your inalienable rights, they're criminals. They got to go to their for-profit jail or gitmo, because it's 10 years under the color of law. You see? And they can never, if you know your rights, and they don't teach us this, that's why they get PTSD when you know. When you know they're wrong, because they can play, but they can't get caught. That's why they have to have insurance. Readdress the district court for District of Columbia. All right, so you know DC's closed, but I'll do it because nothing from nothing leaves nothing. And then she said, and it's 9 pages, so I sent a copy to Chris and everybody so they understand over and over again, because sometimes you got to reread what's going on. So the public international notice to vacate. Okay, so number 1, the commercial organizations that have been hired by the British governments, right? That's been hired by the British governments, a European government. Look at the flag. What does the red, white, and blue flag say? It's a European nation that's messing with us. And the Holy Sees to provide governmental services stipulated under the three federal constitutions have been terminated in bankruptcy. They have to go off of UCC, so they've been terminated. Their contracts have been terminated. Our contracts are not with these subcontractors, so they're not with the subcontractors. That's why she said, if you're going to sue someone, you have to sue the head of the snake. So we got 2 right to sue letters. 2 main contractors, right? They're not with the subcontractors because they have, based on 1870, 1871, they have their franchises that have to stay in DC, but they're not. So they're masquerading around pretending that they're the boss. They're not the boss. But their bankruptcy and bad performances does impact us. Right, Tyrone? Right, Chris? And we do have cause to manage our own affairs and to make decisions with respect to the new service providers. Where's the new service providers? Because the low-hanging fruit didn't get the memo. They're masquerading around. You can play, but you can't get caught. They said they could go out there and bust them, but why interrupt criminals like Flanagan Law Group, like the bondsman who's stealing your money? When I challenge subject matter jurisdiction, everything stops, and you prove to me that Tyrone needs a driver's license when I know you don't. He doesn't need it. All right? So, our actual contracts are with the principal, the Pope, the Queen, and the Lord Mayor, the Rothschilds of London. We have not approved and do not have contracts with any of the new municipal corporations and or territorial corporations. So the states are all corporations. The Flanagan Law Group that they hired against the Westfall Act, that's wrong. That's a violation of your rights, 88 interference right? So you know they're up to no good, and they got caught. So our actual contracts are with the principals, the Pope, the Queen, and the Lord Mayor of London. We have not approved and do not have contracts with any of the new municipal corporations. They're being bankrupt, and or territorial corporations which are seeking to create contracts by assumption of contract in succession. We have specifically provided notice to other principals and have denied any assumptions of succession by the Biden administration for cause. Now keep in mind, she's playing the game and she knows Biden's already been taken care of. So if you believe in Biden, that's your, you've got to really do more research, because the second that he commits a crime, for example, if he goes on television and he tells Ukraine, if you do not fire that prosecutor who's trying to investigate me and my son, then I'm not giving you $1 billion. That's against the law. You got to know he's wrong. You just don't ignore that fact. You just got to know your rights, but you don't know your rights or what he's doing because they don't teach you this. So you think it's okay. So we have specifically provided notice to other principals and have denied any assumption of succession by the Biden administration for cause. Mr. Biden is a self-admitted influence peddler and crook. There is, therefore, no controversy. He admits it. We accept that admission. The number of our municipal employees and dependents who may or may not have voted for Mr. Biden is a moot issue. The decision not to hire the Biden administration and not to allow it to represent us a forbidding access to our credit is a business decision made by lawful deputies, and it may not be presumed against. Now, keep it in the back of your mind. Are you a United States Inc. citizen? Are you living in D.C.? No. So it doesn't apply to you. The second they violate and commit fraud, your rights, and commit fraud, because they can't stay and operate, but here they are. And that's why old Bush said, if they figure out what we've done to them, they're going to kill us. They're going to hang us. And he's right. That's why Joe said, why didn't you challenge Justice Anna? And I said, because she gave me an affidavit. But now that I think and overthink, everybody has a script, and you've got her talking about Biden, good damn well Biden's been taken care of in Gitmo, all right? So we are the employers, and the presumed donors of the public trust, because they put you in a trust. As donors, we have returned and demanded the liquidation of the public trust and the return of the assets unharmed and unencumbered. I'm saying that because she is playing a role, and she's acting like she's a Moor, because she says she's the donor. She says we are the employer. Actually, the Moors are just like Hawaii. You go to Hawaii, they can't steal your property because of the Charter of the Forest. All right? So this is what she's saying happened. This is why Joe says, wake up, Sue. Everybody's playing a game, even Justice Anna. And I'm thinking, okay. But I got mad at Joe because Joe said this is Robert's case. When she says it's Robert's case, she's playing a role. And they want me to give up the 215 claims. She's not the only one who brought up Robert's case. No, it will never be Robert's case. It's Sue's and her son's case. Everybody's interveners. And you have a right. I have a right to protect you, and I have a right to write what you want to whatever makes you whole. But a lot of people don't know what they want. Well, you can be fair, like Justice Anna said, in the lien. You can say, well, let's take the rules and regulations against you. All my 80 clients have a disability. And if you don't have a disability, you're going to get one. And based on their rules, it's $75,000 for the first offense, $155,000 thereafter. Times 3 because of fraudulent inducement. And then you ask for, in the lien, you ask for their public health hazard bonding because they have insurance. Otherwise, it's a felony to operate. Ask Bonsell. When she played us, the first thing she said to everybody in the office, and then you had people on the horn calling me and saying, this is what she said. Don't let her off the hook. She said, she's buying insurance she offered us. Do you want insurance just in case you get caught? Anyway, so we know, we have everything on the record. So we are the employers and the presumed donors of the public trust. Remember, they put you in a trust, and they tossed you, they're using necessary trust, and they stood up your birth certificate, your driver's license, the Federal Reserves, everything's connected. So prove to me that everybody needs a driver's license. They don't. They don't. You got to go back to Rome and take your government system, your injustice system with you. Everything's void ab initio. We are the employers of the presumed donors of the public trust. As donors, we have returned and demanded the liquidation of the public trust and the return of the assets unharmed and unencumbered. This includes all state trusts and custody trusts assets, all gold and silver assets, purloined and deposited offshore. So they went into underneath the Vatican. I'm told they got the gold underneath the Vatican. That's why the Vatican renounced the doctrine of discovery in 2023. So that should give you a hint. If he renounced the doctrine of discovery, he said he's guilty. Overseas investment and all creditors owed to the American state and people. We have provided the means to accomplish this removal of the artificial trust structure that have been imposed under false legal presumption and have allowed for a safe and gradual transition to the state assembly control. All right, so all the territories, number 5, that enters territorial statehood between 1860 and 1959 have been enrolled as state of the Union and have entered into their true capacity as states according the equal footing doctrine as of 1 October 2020. All right, 2020. So number 6, all territorial state organizings are provided notice to vacate and must begin withdrawal and transition planning. So they're supposed to have withdrew. If you look at their Clearfield doctrine, she basically says use that Clearfield doctrine if they cause you harm. Tyrone, they did. Robert, municipal states of state organizations which should not exist under the provision of the federal constitution have already had 10 years to reorganize and liquidate their businesses, so they're slowly being bankrupt, like she said, businesses, interests, and are, together with their federal agencies, not being allowed to continue unlawful and unconstitutional incursion. That means hostile area. So 7, it is unfortunate that this very significant downsizing and removal of municipal interests is necessary, but it is certainly contraindicated by our founding agreement, our will, and our public intent, not to mention being contrary to common sense and our practical benefits. The mistaken presumption that the municipal government represents our civilian government in our purported absence has resulted in our states and people being charged for a completely redundancy of federal and federal state of state services by 2 self-interest commercial corporations, both in the business of providing governmental services. As a result, we have been paying for 2 departments of labor, 2 departments of defense, 2 court system, 2 political administrations, and we have been putting up with not only the cost, but the confusion and infighting that results from the duplication of efforts. That's why Carrie sent me that, or Candy sent me that 2 of everything, stand your ground video. All right. So 8, the actual state assemblies are now in session and prior assumption of authority seized upon by the territory and the municipal government contractors and their respective state-to-state organization must be released in an orderly, gradual, and peaceful manner without fear of rancor. Provisions for the necessary transfers of authority and measures to retask and re-employ people affected by the necessary restructuring are underway and should prove beneficial for all concerned. Yeah, because when you wake up, some people might get upset, but you know, like I said before, what's done is done, and all we can do is understand who thy enemy is, make sure it doesn't happen again, and capitalize on our people. That's good, right? So 9, all members of the general public and international investors, as well as members of state-to-state legislation, have cause to know that as of 1 October 2020, all state trusts, interests, and all assets contained therein have reverted to the living people. Living people, remember, they call you dead. Black means dead. Know who you are. You're a Moor. You're not a Negro. You're not a nigger. You're not an African American. You are already here. You're not a minority, damn it, because they are the minority, not you. All right? So she's saying that all states' interests, trust interests, and all assets contained therein have reverted to the living people of these several states of the Union, and these assets are not available for any continued speculation used as collateral, sales, encumbrance, or abuse by the members of the United States Department of Justice, serving as the U.S. trustees, nor by members of the United States Congress serving as United States trustees together with their heirs, and United States Congress serving as, I'm reading it again, United States Congress as United States trustees together with their heirs and assign, nor are any state trust assets subject to any sale, distribution, secondary administration, contract, or other agreement entered into the state-to-state legislature. All right, because they're going off of Roman law. Number 10, the enrollment of the Western states has been made effective with and retroactively contemplate something with their original entry into, I can't read this because I messed up printing it, sorry, into territorial statehood. All rights, titles, and interest must be yielded to those Americans who have returned and who are daily returning to their lawful standing on the land and soil of this country. So that's why you got to say you're a sovereign person, because they're playing with your straw man. Number 11, as matter of law and of proper public administration, all right, titles, duties, and interests in the international and global realm, which were once exercised by this Confederation of the States of America and the Federal Republic, have returned by operation of law to our unincorporated federation, doing business as United States of America, which was and is the delegator of a multiple or mutually held delegate power of the actual states. Number 12, also as a matter of law and proper public administration, all rights, titles, duties, and interests in the national and local government realm vest in the state of county assemblies, which are now in session for the first time in many years, and all foreign trusts and foreign trust interests otherwise presumed to exist are dissolved. All right, get gone. So number 13, the return of the actual American government to full force and function cannot be accomplished overnight. But the foundational work to rebuild and reconstruct both the Confederation and the States of America and the Federal Republic is underway and ongoing as the only true sovereign, you hear that? Only true sovereign interest in this country, representing all the people of all ethnicities, races, religion, and backgrounds. Our state assemblies hold aloft the banner of national sovereignty and self-determination, and through their unincorporated federation and states, they similarly uphold the ideas of individual freedom and self-determination, and yet also fully accepts voluntary cooperation with other nations for the advancement of mutual peace. That's what we want: peace, security, friendly trade, social and culture exchange, and issues. This is so important because they can never violate commerce law. So if I pay you for justice, you're not taking my money. If I tell you my nephew gave you over $1,000 while you made him lose his job, we got a problem. You can't violate commerce law. You didn't get the memo. Bye, get gone. That's why I know it's a sting operation. So number 14, plus they're supposed to be in D.C., not over, they're supposed to dissolve themselves. They didn't dissolve themselves like she said. So 14, in the transition period, there will be a migration of elements of the American Armed Forces to occupy the position of the original Federal Republic, which is ultimately an instrumentality of the unincorporated Federation. In this way, the function of the original American federal subcontractors can be restored without having to complete the entire reconstruction. First, Mr. Trump. Now keep in mind, Mr. Trump, you know damn well, Mr. Trump's, so she's saying Mr. Trump because she's part, Mr. Trump is the white hats, all right, whoever's running the sting operation. I think it's Miller. That's why we always CC Admiral, we CC the, what's his name, Austin, General Austin, but we CC Miller because Austin, we told Lloyd Austin, he's bad, right? So Mr. Trump is selecting those elements of the American Armed Forces necessary for the task before us, and they are being funded on a temporary basis until the actual final reconstruction is in place and the entire American government is functioning as intended. Yeah. So number 15, Mr. Trump, which is really, I think, I don't know who he is. Miller? We're thinking Miller. Will be called upon to help us secure all those American assets that have been held offshore in diverse locations. That's what they're doing. They're collecting it. And we are all obligated by international law to return control of those recovered assets back to the actual unincorporated Union of States doing business as the United States, which is our domestic national government of the several state assemblies, for a reassignment of a portion of those assets to our unincorporated federation, the United States of America, which is our international and global government, which then assigns resources to the Confederation and the Federal Republic, which Mr. Trump and elements of the American Armed Forces, particularly the United States Army and the United States Air Force and the United States Space Force, will be occupying. Alright? So number 16, these assignments and the correct lawful and legal alignments have been, wait, hold on for a second, it's not alignment, it's arrangements. So have also been made and stand upon the public international record of the Uniform Commercial Code, but it remains under the watchful eye of the international community to be sure that no further substitution or impersonations of other legal chancery is attempted by the British or the European interests seeking to derail or delay our process or impersonate our lawful unincorporated government again. Well, guess what? They got busted in Iowa, Idaho with lands, and they're a mess. In Washington State, in Coffee County. So number 17, upon the receipt of control of our returned trust assets, we shall be authorized the minting of the United States silver dollar for domestic use and American gold coinage for use internationally. This does not imply that credit-based notes will be removed from circulation, but necessary changes will be made across a spectrum of currency product that are either based on other commodities or our commercial or military script. We do not anticipate that anyone need to be harmed in this process at all. 18. We have thus far published the enrollment of the state created during and after the so-called American Civil War, and the first American public law in over 100 years. which establishes punishment and prohibits for corporations seeking to meddle with the natural genome or your genetics because of why? Because of what they're trying to do. Their ultimate goal is transhumanism. So they know. So let's read this back. Of individuals using nanotech and patented genetic material. You got to go up to Washington State, because that's what they're doing, to create the basis to claim these same people are genetically modified organisms, GMOs, subject to ownership by the patent holder. That's what they did with the COVID vaccine. Because if you look at the COVID vaccine, who owns it? It's the Queen, the Vatican, the 1%. It's the Rothschilds, the same people who own the courts. So we have also published and reissued several years ago our renewed sovereign letter patent and our recognition of the Declaration of Independence for July 1776. What happened in 1776? You've got the Illuminati, he's celebrating, that's when he came on board. So on the 4th of July 1776, do we really want to celebrate 1776? 4th of July, the Declaration of Independence of 4 July 1776 as the source of the foundation of our lawful American government. All right, we're gonna have to focus on that. Okay, so 19, the renewed sovereign letter patent reference above are our acknowledgement and receipt of those land and titles interests which are ours by grant and treaty. Now keep in mind, they reneged on every treaty agreement made before, during, after the War of Independence. Okay, so let's read this again. The renewed sovereign letter patents referred or referenced above are our acknowledgement and receipt of those land and titles interests which are ours by grant and treaty agreement made before, during, and after the War of Independence, and these renewed sovereign letters patents represent our peaceful and mutual sharing of land and soil interest among the living people present within the borders of each one of the several states, including the members of the Native American, the Moors, who are as individual welcome to participate in the state assemblies and who are inheritors of all the same constitutional guarantees and protect. Now look, you guys came to Hawaii. You made it a fake state. You killed 90% of us. Now you're going to give our land back, and we're going to come up with an agreement, and it's not going to be based on the Europeans who came to land that wasn't lost. Because I'm thinking about my relatives, our queen, and what you did. You guys stole the land. You stole it and tried to kill us at that. And then take all of our information, and then under the guise of educating us, we're going to have to think about that one. We formalized and recorded and gave international notice of these actions to make it clear that we are the lawful possessors and inheritors, and we are in full command of our records, our history, and our depository receipt, grant, treaties, land patents, and all presumed titles and deeds issued in our purport absent. We are not confused or incompetent or engaged in any war or controversy, and wish only for peaceful and lawful and logistical way forward for our country and for the rest of the world. All right, you're going to have our elderly that y'all killed off, and it's going to be based on the will majority of the people. It's going to be based on our culture, because one of the reasons why they changed our culture is because it was easier and safer for the white man to steal land. That's what it says on page 21. You killed our children. You raped. Because you didn't want us to have our land. So we got to really think about this. Number 21, our government is not now, nor has it ever been engaged in oppressing anyone, dictating any religious belief, harming or depriving any based on their race or ethnicity. Yeah, really? Read page 21. Promoting any system of bondage or depriving anyone of the full enjoyment of their assets, both public and privates. 22, I'll challenge that in a heartbeat. 22, we recognize and everyone else must recognize that while there are urgent needs to be addressed throughout the world, the necessary and lawful changes will not happen instantaneously or occur all the same pace or at the same pace in all places. A daunting process of evaluation and education lies ahead, not only for America and Americans and Moors, but for the rest of the world. That's why Joe told me or asked me why didn't I challenge her, because some of this is bullshit. All right, because you can't. I'm going to go all the way to number 14. She's got like 34, because we've got to come together as one and try to figure out what's the best way. We're not just going to take European way of life and their culture. We've got to understand our culture, and we've got to heal everybody and capitalize on everybody's culture, real culture, because you got people living today and they put all of us in either toss us at sea or put us in a Indian reservation. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way to number 24 because it relates to them putting my people in prison without a trial. It says legislation it came out of Rome, which has imposed upon the natural and unalienable rights of individuals, right, Tyrone and Chris? They violate your inalienable rights, so therefore they don't have jurisdiction over you. They got to dismiss the case. They got to keep you out of their area, their jails. So the legislation which has imposed upon the natural and unalienable rights of individuals and those rights and prerogatives guaranteed by the Constitution will similarly be rooted out, set aside, and nullified, resulting in the release of many prisoners who have been victims of state Inc. territorial and municipal prison for-profit schemes. This is important. This is important, number 24. And so I'm just reading this what Justice Anna said, because I know at the end of the day they have to dissolve themselves, because we've paid for a quo warranto, writ of mandamus, and we played their game, administrative effery. The second they violate your rights, your inalienable rights, they have to dissolve themselves because of what? 884. So remember, try to figure out what's going on, capitalize on everybody's strain, understand who you are, a more sovereign person. They will never have, those people in D.C. will never have jurisdiction over the sovereign person because they made two of you. You use the Clearfield doctrine when they act a fool, and that's what we've done. Prove to me, prove it that you're legit, when we know good damn well you and your flag, red, white, blue flag with yellow fringe, as a banner. Do you see what they're doing? Wake up. So without further ado, know that it's time to take down the bar. And they said it. You can't make this up. They're in charge of the sting. Whoever's in charge of the sting operation, they're in charge of the television. Right, General Flynn? When we did our writ of mandamus, it's not an accident that he and his attorney, fake attorney, did their writ of mandamus, and a baby clerk, the same baby clerk who signed our writ of mandamus, quo warranto, signed theirs. Baby clerks never pass law, sign orders. We're going through a sting operation. This is Sue out.
We have an army of digital soldiers. What we are now, what we call, I call them, because this was an insurgency, folks. This was run like an insurgency. This was irregular warfare at its finest in politics. And that story will continue to be told here. But we have what we call citizen journalists. Okay? Because the journalists that we have in our media, did a disservice to themselves, actually more than they did to this country. They did a disservice to themselves because they displayed an arrogance that is unprecedented. And so the American people decided to take over the idea of information. They took over the idea of information. And they
Okay, to prove my point even further, that we're going through a sting operation, Ken Scott, who gave me and Bradley a 6-hour class on the Babylonian bullshit system from your Social Security number all the way to your straw man, driver's license, etc. He said, Sue, put your radar on, and what's wrong with this? Now, this is for Tyrone, Chris, and everybody else going into their kangaroo court. When you see the red, white, and blue flag, you immediately do what? Ask them why they're not in Rome, because they cannot come outside of Rome because of 1870. But what's wrong with this picture? What's wrong is, one, they did not establish subject matter jurisdiction. 4 things need to be in the courtroom. If 4 things are in the courtroom when you challenge subject matter jurisdiction, and if you're my 888 client, I always challenge subject matter jurisdiction before you get in there. The second they violate due process, they got to go. They're committing treason. They're part of this Rome team. That's why it has to come down. Because they're making $70 trillion off of putting you in their for-profit prison and you walking in and out of their kangaroo court, which is a felony, by the way. You can't waste any more tax dollars letting them beat you up and your kids up and your mother and your father, your brother and your sister. They don't have and will never have authority over you. That's why they got to come down. That's why we did the quo warranto, writ of mandamus, and the lien for the bar. We did it in advance. We did it in advance, so we know we won. We know they're coming down. They can't survive. So, without further ado, just understand what the red, white, and blue flag with the yellow fringe is. It's part of the Roman team. It's got to come down, and your flag has to come up. Know what your flag is. Your real national flag. When you have a real flag, you can go to war. Right? Not a fake flag, because that's a banner. They're still taking us to war. It's wrong. Is void ab initio. Their team is void ab initio. When you realize, because you don't know, you've been tricked, you've been indoctrinated into a system, but when you wake up, you have to step up to the plate and say no more. This is Sue out.
So the banks are done in by this court case alone. This court case is proof. All the proof you need if you go read it. It's 100% proof of the duplicate system that operates from your social, and you didn't know about it, I didn't know about it, but it's there. It's a fact. Now, how about the court? There's many bonds, but we're going to just use this one. Any initial case, whether it's a traffic violation or you're going to court for child support, divorce, it don't matter. Your case number creates a CUSIP number that gets traded on the stock market, and they file this bond right here. SF24 bid bond. This is the first time you go to court. This bond is filed. It goes to the Department of Fiscal Services, and they collect off your account that you don't know you have. A check gets cut straight to the courthouse, but you didn't know about it. So there you go. Here's the real crazy part. Why the judges and nobody can talk about it? Because they're all part of this system that was in place before they even got there. Court Registry Investment System. What is it? Well, they pull up all these bonds and they get traded on the stock market. When they retire or when the bond matures, they get a check. Yeah, they are literally incentivized to find you guilty, and they all get percentages. The judge gets the highest, you got the prosecutor or the DA, you got the court clerk, and you even got the defense attorney. Oh yeah. When they sign off, they get in a piece of this. And that is a fact. And that is why I say the Bar Association is a ball and chain around our entire legal system, and that's why it stands for British.
Winning in court. All these courts are privately owned trading companies. The United States District Courts are all owned. Those are your Article 1 courts. They're all owned by the United States Attorney's Executive Offices out of Washington, D.C., which is a privately owned corporation. They're Article 1 legislative tribunals. They're not courts. They have a DUNS number, they have a PIT code, SIP code, NAICS number. You have to have that number in order to trade internationally. All these courts are registered with the DoD, Department of Defense. They have a DUNS number, which is Data Universal Numbering System. That's a Dun and Bradstreet. You have to be registered with CCR, Contractors Central Registration under the DoD. They have another department called the DLIS, Defense Logistics Information Service. The DLIS issues a case code that's spelled CAGE, Commercial and Government Entity, which corresponds to the bank account. They have a bank account. They take everything that you file into the court and they securitize it. And these banks and all these banks are registered, they have a depository agreement, a security agreement and an escrow agreement. And most of them are registered with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York City. And they use what they call. North Carolina uses a Circular 16, which they use as their depository agreement. They take public funds and they deposit them under it's called a depository resolution agreement. And they have a security agreement which the clerk of the court signs with the bank. And they have an escrow agent that acts as the go-between the Federal Reserve Bank that they have the account with, so all these courts are taking your money and funneling it into an escrow account. Most of them are in New York. There's $60 trillion of your money in the Federal Reserve Bank of New York City. And they've told the courts not to rule against the banks on these foreclosure cases. They're all in bed together. And what these lawyers are doing is acting as private debt collectors. And under the Debt Collectors Practices Act, it's called the FDCPA and it's Title 15 Section 1692. In order to be, when you're a public debt collector you have to be registered with the government, and you have to have a license and you have to have a bond in order to collect debt. Well, these attorneys are what you call private debt collectors and they don't have the attorneys are exempted by the Bar Association on that provision, but their firm is not.
28 U.S.C. 3002, Section 15A. That's 28 U.S.C. 3002, Section 15A. The American Bar Association is actually a branch of the National Lawyers Guild Communist Party. The American Bar Association is actually a branch of the National Lawyers Guild Communist Party. I'm going to read that one more time. The American Bar Association is actually a branch of the National Lawyers Guild Communist Party, which can be located in the hard copy printing of the 28 U.S.C. 3002, Section 15A. The online version of Title 28 U.S.C. has been altered. The online version of the Title 28 U.S.C. has been altered. The online version of the Title 28 U.S.C. has been altered, as I've just researched it, and it's true, by the Attorney General to read something entirely different, apparently because this fact has recently shown up in too many private court petitions. Now, this is a fair use clause. I'm reading this from this other entity's website. To become a member of the Bar Association, applicants must have obtained a doctorate in law or the equivalent thereof and passed an examination designed to test the depth of their indoctrination. If they pass, they are required to surrender their American citizenship and swear allegiance to the Queen of England and not to the Constitution. This means that all card-carrying American lawyers are foreign agents, liars, traitors, and communists. Let me just read that one more time. To become a member of the Bar Association, applicants must have obtained a doctorate in law or the equivalent thereof and pass an examination designed to test the depth of their indoctrination. If they pass, they are required to surrender their American citizenship and swear allegiance to the Queen of England and not to the Constitution. This means they are all card-carrying American lawyers. This means that all card-carrying American lawyers are in fact foreign agents, liars, traitors, and communists. Hence why the Bible says, what? Woe be unto lawyers and doctors. Now, I'm reading further up here. He goes on to explain, The American Bar Association is a foreign union, and its members are all working in collusion with Israel, the British Empire, the Vatican, the Rothschild and the Rockefeller banking empires, Congress, and the elites to undermine America. All attorneys are agents of a foreign power who swear allegiance to that foreign power, i.e. the Queen of England. This is why all lawyers must file a written notice of appearance in every court case they represent. By that notice, the lawyer is admitting to the court that he is a foreign agent and he is requesting permission to represent you in the corporate court. Your contract with that lawyer gives him your sovereign power of attorney. Your contract with that lawyer gives him your sovereign power of attorney to represent your best interest. And he immediately uses it against you by admitting to the judge that you will accept the jurisdiction and decisions of the corporate court. So much for winning your case or any appeal. Hence why most of you who write to me about wanting to hire a civil service or some type of lawyer, I always suggest you go and do some research, right? When a prosecutor loses a trial, he is obligated by the court to pay the costs of prosecution out of pocket. Your attorney always divulges your defense strategy to the prosecutor to avert this embarrassment and penalty from being assigned to him. This group is a brotherhood, and these corporate courts are a business, and everything is about commerce. People are regarded as nothing more than corporate property. Now, I was listening to Yusuf L in the previous video. I'll put the link to that video in the description below. So you guys can go straight to 11 minutes, 13 seconds around there where you will hear, this is not anti-Semitic, we're talking about semantics, how these Jewish, as we Moors heirs know, we are the original Jews, Jewels, are explaining how they in fact switched and changed over the meaning of the word humans, Moors, to mean animals. So hence the prior video I made in lieu of the war on drugs, and how the war on drugs was really the war on the people who have been misclassified as a drug and also as animals. Hence the human trafficking going on through those churches that you call jails, doing satanic worship, giving the heirs, the Moors, foods and things that they don't normally eat, right? Anyways, so you guys can go and research. Do not take my word for it. And I'll post the link to this website because it's got some really good information here. And there's a book. There's a couple books that you guys might want to look at going to get. In the video that Yusuf L is sharing, there's a lady in there who was the head of the education corporation, and she stepped down. She was describing her experience having access to all of the prior education plans and how the plan for the education system, and recently here we saw the education minister step down. Shortly thereafter, we made this video about the dumbing down in the Board of Education Rockefeller foolish education system, hence why so many of us Moors homeschool ourselves. And she was explaining the plan was to dumb us down to create slaves and more labor, right? And so once they keep the population dumbed down to the reality of who they are and the power that they've been given by the ancestors, the angel gods, and the laws that have been put in place to protect us all. Hence why so many Moors now globally, thank you to all the Moors globally who are doing their due diligence to go and clean house through lawsuits and liens and what have you, through doing their own research. So we share this with you guys today as we, as you know, have written to a lot of the international authorities on this particular post. And we have stated clearly that these are actual Nazi communists who are KKK, Deputy Knights Templars. We're not making this stuff up, guys. You know, this has been some extensive research from some of the elders, Taj Tariq Bey. A lot of the elders on here have shared with us the history and the laws that have gone on and what we're all being subjected to, whether you realize it or not. And so those Jewish that we allowed to come to America, and if you watch the movie Casablanca, which explains that we gave them our identity as Jews and we classified them as Jewish because they wish they were Jews. Now, I was raised Jew because my family tribe is Jew, the original Jew, and my father has always taught us about our Jew background, not Jewish, Jew, and Moors. And so we were raised knowing that we were Moors or Maroon and actually Jews. So those of you who are out there who know what I'm talking about and were subjected, and my mother worked for the Jewish. I remember being little and my mom would come home with all this weird and wonderful stuff and stories. So yeah, that's what's going on. You guys go and do the research. Don't take my word for it. But yeah, this, and you know, the Pope has shut them down, this bar-carrying, unlicensed group of entities claiming to be lawyers, etc. Go read the letter, June 10th, 2014. Thank you to all the new subscribers here. You guys go back and watch those old videos with all the information. Thank you to those who wish to give us a love gift. We greatly appreciate it. See the link in the description. Like, share, subscribe. Have yourself a great day.
Because Almighty God's had enough. I've said to you that this was the second harvest God's going to bring people to Him. It's also been described as the Great Awakening because you're getting ready to learn that God is real. That's the second harvest. But you're going to be awakened to this fact that just as God is real, the devil is real. And the devil's children are going to be exposed. Every lie will be revealed. They're killing our children. Send them to jail. Put them in front of a firing squad. They are committing acts against humanity. The penalty for an act against humanity is death. Take them out. For every little child that has suffered and is suffering tonight, for every little child that doesn't know how to get home, for every little child that goes to bed at night after being tortured and abused and just wants to see their mom and dad and their family, you fight for those children. Don't you ever quit fighting for those little children. Because this is America. This is America. In America, we do not tolerate crimes against humanity. And if you're torturing and terrorizing a child and having sex with a child and actually murdering a child and eating parts of a child and using the body parts of that child, that is a crime against humanity, and we're not going to tolerate it. Not in America. Not in the country formed by God Almighty. And for those of you that do, watch out. Because God's judgment is coming. He's going to lift up His children. And He's going to crush those devil worshipers. So you pray for it. You go back to your homes and you pray for God to take action. You go home and you pray for those little children. Because God wants to hear you tell Him that you love those little children as much as God Almighty loves them. Love the children. Pray for the children. Listen to the Word of God. It's past time. But we're on God's time. Are we going to win it? Not right. We have already won it because God has already won. This is our country. This is our children. This is our God. And God has already won. Give Him all the praise tonight. Let me hear you praise God as loud as you can. Send it up to heaven. Send it up to heaven and tell Him how much you love Him, how much you praise Him. Let Him know, because He wants you to praise Him. He loves you too. The cue. Here you go, Newsweek. Watch this one. There you go. I'm not afraid to talk about it. They've accused me of being a QAnon conspiracy theorist. Why? Because they're telling you that I am a bad messenger. They're trying to attack me because they can't attack Q, because Q is the truth. This is about the children, for God's sakes. Send this videotape. Send it to Hollywood. Hey, Clay, send it to the House of Windsor. Hey, Clay, send it to Bill Gates. Send it to the damn Illuminati. Let them hear the truth. And whatever they do to me, I don't fear them at all. Send it to the Vatican. Send it to the politicians, the Clintons, the Obamas, the Bidens, the Bushes. Send it to those people because they are involved in child sex trafficking. It's time to tell the truth to America.
I'll never apologize for the United States of America. Ever. I don't care what the facts are.
For the Real News Network, I'm Ben Norton.
Freedom with a raised fist. Power to the people in the movement. Yeah, let's start the revolution. We back in the building. We the solution. No peace without war. What you think we fighting for? Ground level where it's overkill. We the people gotta rise, can't sit still. Stand up when it gets real. Fight for the truth like a soldier will. And we ain't falling for the okie doke. We ain't going down like the mother folks. From the east to west coast. No justice, no peace if you didn't know. The voice of the people ain't silent. It's time that we form an alliance. Here comes a revolution. Here comes a revolution. A new era of resistance. Power to the people in the movement. Here comes a revolution. We the evolution. A new era of resistance. Power to the people in the movement. Here comes the revolution. We ride for the cause. Shine bright like the light in the dark. Stand up for what's right from the start. It's a cold war, you gotta go hard. The spirit of a giant in the land of the free. Heart of a lion. Got the will of a titan. Yeah, it's us against the tyrants. And when we fight back, they can't deny it. They can't stop the uprising. The voice of the people ain't silent. It's time that we form an alliance. Here comes a revolution. Here comes a revolution. A new era of resistance. Power to the people in the movement. Here comes a revolution. We the evolution. A new era of resistance. Power to the people in the movement. You can't stop the people. We in the battle versus good and evil. Time to fight it on the front line. Give us some freedom, it's about time. You can't stop the people. We in the battle versus good and evil. Time to fight it on the front line. Give us our freedom, it's about time.
I got kicked off of Noah's Ark.
Still go.